Hi, friends. Welcome again to another episode of Beyond the Clouds Edge to Edge Transformation. This transformation is literally global. It's not just engineers, it's not just technologists, marketers, and investors. Many governments are also getting involved when it comes to AI, when it comes to semiconductors. There are a lot of policy decisions that also need to be taken. I had the good fortune of running into Sanjay Kumar, who has been a part of the Chips for America. And he's going to tell us a little bit about how the government of the United States is participating in this tremendous transformation that we are seeing all around us. Sanjay, tell us about your journey and your role at Chips for America.
First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you. I have known you for a while and really happy to be speaking with you. So currently I'm part of the CHIPS program office here in Department of Commerce and specifically senior director on the investment team. This office was set up by the secretary and her team to implement the CHIPS for America Act. My role here is to evaluate the applications, work with the industry and understand the industry's requirement, work with the applicants to guide them through the projects. This is a fascinating role. There are hundreds of applications in the program and working with a large number of companies who are active in the semiconductor space. There is chip manufacturing, there is packaging of the chips, and there is downstream supply chain for that packaging substrate, equipments for the fabs, and then the materials, gases, chemicals, and so forth. So there is a very broad range of applicants in the program.
So, Sanjay, I remember you were a hardcore technologist and a decision maker in big chip companies, semiconductor companies, software companies. How did you end up taking on this role with the Department of Commerce? What inspired you?
Shankar, to be honest with you, it's been in making for a while. Precisely, it's been in making for last 23 years or so since I graduated. I always felt there is a debt that I owe to the country, which gave me education. And I felt the same thing over here in US. This country gave me a tremendous opportunity to come here, learn here, work here. I always felt that I owe a debt to the country. When I became permanent resident, I was at Broadcom and I went to DC to learn what can I do, what can I contribute, but I did not know much. So I came back. I always kept that small piece somewhere in my head that kept on burning after doing that initiative at Facebook, setting up a fabless inside Facebook to design the data center chips, AI chips, and video transcoding chips. I was thinking now it's time to pay back the debts. But again, I did not know how to go about it and what kind of opportunities are there and what can I do. And then this Intel's opportunity to bring the manufacturing back came. I said, okay, I cannot do something, but at least I can bring manufacturing back. While departing my role at Facebook, I wrote a post internally. It was in 2021 that I'm doing this because I want to bring manufacturing back. Eventually, I want to serve the country, at least do a little bit so that I feel good about it. There was no discussion of the chips or anything like that back in 2021. But then eventually this came about and I felt this is where it all comes around, where it all culminates. That's what led to this role. It has been a lot of fun being able to pull some page out of the playbook here and there from my career, from various technologies and business. Also, there is a lot of learning opportunities in this role.
Indeed, that's really inspiring to hear. A lot of us aspire to do things for our country where we were born and the country where we have been serving and we have been learning. And I'm glad you're executing on that. Sanjay, I've known you over the years in the industry, and now you're working with the government. You've taken on so many different roles in the past. What was your journey like from roles in the industry, in semiconductors and systems, towards now working with the government?
That's a good question, Shankar. Thanks for asking that. My roots are engineering. That's where I started out. Chip design for various kind of products in the industry, memories, microcontrollers, and I learned a great deal. And so I've been up and down in the stack, initially at the engineering companies, fabless companies, doing chip design, engineering manager, and then running businesses at the fabless companies. and then at a system company, then at a foundry, now at the government. So it has been a fascinating and very rewarding journey to learn up and down in the stack and being able to connect the dots. I have been thinking about this kind of thing for a long time. I have never had the opportunity to execute on it. I always felt that I owe a debt to the country which gave me education, the country which gave me job opportunity, but I did not know how to work for the government. When I became a permanent resident a decade back, I came to DC to learn how the government works. There were not much opportunity over there, so I went back and kept on working in the industry. But that flame kept on burning all the time. When I was at Facebook, I helped establish a fabless semiconductor inside Facebook for the data centers, for AI chips and video transcoding chips, to scale up that team and grow that team. And then I was thinking that I have done here power electronics, RF, microcontrollers, cameras, image processing chips. How can I go back and revisit that same thing? I decided to join Intel to bring manufacturing back. Here was a bit I could do by bringing the manufacturing back and channel my expertise. When I was departing Facebook, I wrote internally that this is my step leading towards bringing the manufacturing back. But there was no discussion of CHIPS Act at that time. The CHIPS Act came around towards of Q4 of 2022 officially. That's where I learned that this is the right opportunity where I can channel all the experience I have from various domains, both business and technical experience, and help execute this program. Frankly, it's been a rewarding journey so far from the very first day in the industry until now, being associated with such a esteemed crowd, learning from them and growing with them.
Indeed, Sanjay, we are very fortunate to have seen this time when semiconductor have become the new oil. Making a chip is a very, very complex and a very expensive ordeal. How do companies approach you now at the Chips for America? What's the process like? How do you decide what to invest in?
That's an excellent question. To the credit of the secretary and everyone around her, the process is very transparent process. The applicants submit a two-page statement of interest describing the project, what they would like to do. And if you go to chips.gov, it is very clearly laid out. The rubrics of evaluation is clearly laid out on what vectors a project is evaluated, economic resiliency, security of the supply chain, workforce development, and so forth. Once an applicant adds an SOI, then somebody from the team gets back to them and help them through the process. If they decide to move forward for the NOFO one, so there is something called a pre-app, which is recommended. The pre-app is a straightforward process that applicant describes their project, the financials, and answer all the questions on the rubrics. And the team looks at the project and give feedback to the applicant, which leads to a full application. This is designed so that participant doesn't have to do all the work. They do some work, they get the feedback, and they submit the full app. Just like any decision in the private sector, there is like reviewing committees in front of which we present the merits of the project and go through the decision collectively. It's a very transparent, straightforward process. The second thing that you asked, how do we make a decision? That's a great question. It depends on the type of the decision. For this type of work, I personally follow a framework that I have developed over the years through the various businesses and various investment decision. When I look at a power electronics project, I go back to how I made decisions on the power electronics. If I look at a photonic investment, I go back to my photonics thesis of investment. If we think of a purely commercial decision, it is about getting into a new market, deciding on a new venture, growing an existing business. So we all have made this kind of decision along our journey in the corporate world. So if you think about a project, is ROI of the project and the probability of hitting that ROI. So ROI of a project, it's a straightforward thing. It's a financial model. So how do we do the estimate the probability of this venture being successful? We look at the market for this particular thing for next 5 years, understand the competitive dynamics. What are the disruptive technologies in the horizon for next 5 to 10 years? On top of that, you lay out the meta consideration. So you look at your customers, suppliers, the governments, the partners that you're operating on, this decision, what they need to support this decision. On top of that, you lay out strategic consideration, corporate priorities, and you lay out the geopolitical environment, the regulatory environment, and then you make a decision. It does sounds like a lot of variables. So this is journey that you go through with the entrepreneurs, with the companies, with the corporates. You go through this journey. Through this, you get to a clarity. And that clarity comes down to very few variables once you have gone through this decision making. I'll give you an example. Let's say here is a project. So this is a very cool technologies. Let's say it's an XYZ technology. What does it do for supply chain? Do we have supply from the alternate friendly country? It is something that is critical to be here. It can come down to as simple as that in terms of decision making. Even though the technology might be really sophisticated, in the end of the day, it's a portfolio optimization exercise. There is only $39 billion for manufacturing incentives. And how do you maximize that $39 billion? This supply chain is very complicated. There is so many pieces to it, what you want to invest on and what you don't want to invest on. Commercially speaking, I'll give you an example. Let's say hard drive, right? This is from my previous life. How would you decide that? An entrepreneur comes to you and they say, I have a new hard drive or a storage technology. First of all, it comes down to how fast you can read and write the data. What is the cost of storing the bits per gig? What is the power? How long that storage will last? This entrepreneur, what they have done. So I'm going to make an example. I don't know if it's true or not. So today the storage happens on different media such as flash and hard drive and so forth. Let's say somebody comes up with a new storage media which is optics or photonics. Store the bits 1 and 0 as light. This technology, you will start to see, okay, in terms of how expensive this technology is, what is the storage life of this technology, what is the market size of this, how will you position it, which particular piece of the market you can take with it. You build a business case, and then what the suppliers have to do to make this, who will be your distribution partners, then the manufacturing piece, and you figure out how the government plays a role in this. You will build a business case, you will build an investment thesis, and whether to invest in this particular technology or not, at the end, it will come down to maybe a page or two in terms of making the decisions.
Wow, sounds very exciting. The last time we spoke, Sanjay, you mentioned that every single opportunity you had in your life, whether it was at Intel Foundry or it was at Facebook, you learned something unique, something interesting. What would you say you've learned in this job? What are the gifts that this opportunity has presented to you?
It's a very good question. Every place is an institution. Every company is built by remarkable people on whose shoulder we are standing. So we get an opportunity to learn from a place. When I was at Facebook, I was driving the custom silicon at Facebook, but then I had another opportunity to assess the state of the industry across compute, storage, and networking. Every quarter, pick up one or two technologies, storage, compute, or networking, assess where the industry is going, and map that back to the hardware strategy. So I had the opportunity to go into practically everything, whether it is the networking piece of it or the memory piece of it, and had the opportunity to discuss with these companies what their considerations are and what should be the strategy. It was a system level learning. In the manufacturing business, I learned how to make a large capex decision. In the government, it's been another amazing opportunity. The impact of these decisions are very, very large. The decisions we make at the companies, they are maybe a $5 billion decision, $10 billion decision. Here, the decisions are playing a big role in the economy of the country. That has been a learning in terms of the appreciation for the government, what it does for the industry and for the economy, whether it is access to clean energy, transportation, digital infrastructure, and seeing that from the other side of the table, what is that key consideration for the government to make these decisions has been really rewarding. One thing that has really impressed me is the quality of the people who are in the government. That has been eye-opening. So being able to work with very talented people and being able to see how government guides and shepherds the economy of the country. The third piece has been being able to interact with various industries. As part of any investor would do, they would discuss with the customers about a technology, about a project, about a decision. So in this job, being able to interact with colleagues in the defense has stretched my worldview in terms of things that are important for them, whether it is in the air or in the ground, and how these technology differentiate the solutions. Similarly, with the automotive companies, what are their consideration, where they are going, hyperscalers, energy. So being able to access across these various industries, being able to interact with them, understand their consideration has been rewarding. So in the industry, I have been up and down in the vertical stack. Here, I have been broad across the various segments and seeing that interdisciplinary nature of the technology, how a technology plays a role in the energy segment, in the defense segment, and seeing that being able to connect the dots has been really rewarding for me personally.
I totally agree with you. I had a unique opportunity around the turn of the century to do some work with the Food and Drug Administration. And at the time, it looked like, why do they regulate us so much? Software for biotech industry. And today, when I look at the implications, they were thinking 20, 30, 100 years ahead. And that's how we have safe medicines during the pandemic to be able to come up with a drug within a year or two and save humanity. All that happened because of the foresight of the regulators who are thinking long term. Thank you for educating us on that. And you brought up a very interesting point. $39 billion dollars to fund everything that's possible with semiconductors. In fact, I just saw in the news a couple of days ago, Sam Altman seems to be raising $7 trillion. Dollars. I can see where the constraints are. How do you work with these constraints? In theory, you could be supporting any semiconductor project that's of national importance. How do you decide what is important and what are the priorities?
I cannot agree with you more in terms of $39 billion. There are companies who are investing as much yearly. But there are other pieces also here. To build a leading edge fab is very expensive. Even the current and mature fab is not cheap. Even the packaging projects are running into billions now. Packaging is becoming more and more sophisticated. It is more like front end manufacturing rather than back end manufacturing. And the sophistication of those tools from various companies, if you see that, you feel like you're an entry a fab instead of packaging house. So obviously, there is a cost that companies talk about. But that's why government has different pieces of incentives. One is investment tax credit, ITC, which can be up to 25% of the project cost. Then there is the direct grant piece of it, on which we work, 5 to 15%. And then if we look at the utility cost, the OPEX, we are one of the most competitive over there in terms of the cost of the power, the cost of the land, the cost of the water, and the infrastructure. So that makes it a level playing field for the companies to invest over here in terms of the supply of talented people. We need to do more. When we think of general manager of a company or a CEO is looking at where they want to go next. And these incentive comes into level playing the field for them, making it easy for them to make decision to expand over here by bridging the cost through these various things. On top of that, there is a loan piece of it, which is access to cheap capital. Value of that loan is significant. So even though it's a small amount up and down in the stack, there is at least a try to make it level playing as compared to any other country in the world.
Thanks, Sanjay. When I look at the gamut of technologies that are changing and changing really fast, AI comes to mind. Artificial intelligence has made a lot of noise in the last few years. As engineers, we use it almost every day, whether it's in the process of making chips or manufacturing chips. What's your take on that? Where do you see AI playing a role in different facets of life?
I'll tell you one incident in my life. I was in 10th grade in a rural setting in India. I didn't know much about electronics or anything. One of my cousins visited us. I still remember she brought some chocolates, which was the most interesting piece. But I asked her, what do you do? She said, I design computers. Never seen a computer. When she explained intuitively, what I understood was it is like taking a piece of human intelligence and put it in a device, and that device does something for us. That's how I internalized it. I was really fascinated by it. I was decent in math and science. It piqued my curiosity. I saw a vision, you can say. AI is similar. What we have done is we are increasing that level of intelligence. The fundamental thesis is same. The impact of that is huge because more and more intelligence we are able to create outside of us, it increases our productivity. If we think of AI's application, there's a huge opportunities across the technology stack. If you take any system, there will not be a system that is not touched by AI. If you look at the telecom stack, telecom infrastructure, as you probably know very well in terms of open RAN, AI can play a big role in the network management, in the predictive maintenance, radio resource allocations. All that has to go somewhere. That piece of the software is running a CPU. This becomes more and more heterogeneous. That intelligence will be put into a radio management unit. So that drives the demand for the semiconductor. If we come down into the stack, if we come down to chips designed by chips. That's where it's going in terms of EDA being able to design chips. If we come down to the manufacturing stack, being able to simulate these machines in the cloud, that improves the velocity. The equipment that makes the chips, if we are able to simulate them in the cloud, we can make better equipments. It's all related to AI. Similarly, in producing the semiconductors, the physics of it. So there is simulation model. Let's say take example of being able to grow the epitaxial layer on the wafer to make devices. There we need to analyze the defect. AI model which can do it and can suggest to the machine to spread the epitaxy like that. That will improve the velocity of epi growth. AI application up and down in the stack and across the stack is a huge opportunity. We will see new use cases of semiconductor which is going to power this AI. Whether it's a communication piece, whether it's a compute piece, whether it's a storage piece. If we zoom out of all of it and if you see a forest view of it, AI is equivalent to the sovereignty of a country. The reason is that the AI model is having a context. If we take an AI model, it cannot be applied across geographics. So let's say we are in a company and we have an AI model and we tell them, hey, can you write this contract for me? If that AI model is developed in some other geography, they won't have that context of the law of that particular geography. They won't have the nuances. So the contract that is going to come out is going to be tailored by the people where the AI model was developed. So if a country wants to be able to use AI, they have to develop their own model in their own languages with their own context. That's where the hardware piece comes into the play. Having access to the technology which can train the model faster, that's very obvious, whether it is a self-driving cars, compute, or whatever the piece is, being able to having access to that technology equivalent to the sovereignty of that and having access to the AI models. If you see the importance of the AI, the digital infrastructure, it is as good as national security for any country.
I never considered the implications of AI in terms of the gravity. It could be as much as the sovereignty of a nation. Speaking of which, just like we have the Chips for America Act, we are seeing huge investments from governments like the EU, the United Kingdom, India, Israel, around the world. Are you folks at the Chips for America office cooperating with many of these other offices around the world? And if so, how is it all going to play out?
Absolutely. The partners play an important role and working together. This is a very capital intensive industry. No single government has the funds to be able to close the loop on the supply chain. So the partners play an important role, whether it's India, whether it's Mexico, whether it's European Union and Japan. Every country, they have their strengths. Japan, amazing technology, equipment, in materials. Europe, amazing current and mature capabilities, and so forth. So, being able to use the strengths of the partners so that this allied ecosystem is able to bridge the gap that exists in the supply chain today. There is a team in the CHIPS program for the external government outreach. We get to join, discuss, and exchange views with various government. And if you think of India, India has done an amazing job in terms of digital infrastructure. I don't get much time to follow, but as much as I can follow, I can see folks like Nandan Nilekani, Ashwini are doing a phenomenal job on envisioning how the digital infrastructure will play out. Personally, Nitin Gadkari is my role model when it comes to the innovation and when it comes to creative thinking. Fab is one important piece of it. But if you look at a system, it is more than the chips. There is a supply chain piece to it, equipment, materials, chemicals, and then wires, connectors. All of this is very sophisticated. Even though they are labeled as commodity, it is not a simple thing to design a 100 gigahertz connector. Similarly, a photonics connector, pluggable optics. Next generation of pluggable optics is like being to take it out very easily. So designing those connectors is extremely sophisticated. All countries have a role to play in here, up and down in this stack of making a system. If you look at a system in the data center, if you look at a defense system, if you look at automotive system, there's so much opportunities for various countries in the allied ecosystem to play their role in portfolio optimization at a global level.
Sanjay, you've been a decision maker in various startups and large companies, and now with the government. Is there a difference in how decisions are taken and what the implications are?
There is a difference in the private sector and the public setting. There is definitely a difference. In the private setting, decisions are about how to increase revenue, how to grow the business, how to take care of employee partners and customers. In the public sector, the implication of these decisions is far reaching. There are more principles, more stakeholders for these decisions. In public sector, they have to follow a process. There has to be transparency in the decision making. Decision makers are responsible to the public, so have to keep a record of all the decisions and evaluate those decisions in terms of the impact. The public is the largest stakeholder in these decisions, and then the other agencies. The process seems to be a bit longer than in the private sector for the obvious reasons. It is a very thorough process of making a decision because of the implications of these decisions. The implications of a decision at the company, one of the implications is growing a company from 20 billion to 40 billion in 5 years. Here, the implications are for the lives of people involved in it. The implications of decisions at the country level, they're much far reaching. So that's why the decision process is more elongated and seems complicated. I got a new appreciation of being able to balance these various things when we are making these decisions. And I got a new appreciation of how a government works, what a government does for the country, the citizen, and the economy.
We are in the early stages of the Siliconomy, as Pat Gelsinger of Intel said. I'm sure a lot of companies and a lot of organizations approach you, whether it's small startups, mid-sized companies, huge companies, educators. What advice do you have? What's the best way of working with the government and making successful endeavors?
I have worked with a lot of startups back in the industry from Asia, Europe, America. A large number of startups is various points in the stack from the hardware to software. One thing I observed was not just think of point solution. It's always good to see the whole system, how that innovative solution they are bringing about, how does it fits into the system, and map it to their partners. How will they go to market? How will they get it manufactured? How will their customer use it? The benefit has to be not 5x or 10x. Sometimes the benefit of an innovative solution has to be 100x. For example, back in my days at data center, I have had discussion with all kind of companies to take their solution and operate at hyperscaler warehouse computing. The cost that customer has to operationalize it up and down in the stack, being able to change the services. That's what startup has to think. And then the risk, the strategic risk. If you take a component from one company and change it, what it does to the relationship with the existing supplier. The customer has to think about it. Stakes are very high for the customer. That's why benefits has to be exponential for the customer. So it'll be great if startups think about the whole system, not just the point solution.
And especially when we look at things that are of national importance and how it can affect every facet of life. At a personal level, as you can see, young people are confused. Technology is changing every day. Even people in their mid journey of their career, they're trying to figure out where should they focus their energy. A lot of anxiety because of all this. What suggestions do you have for people to have a very interesting and exciting career journey without all the stress and anxiety that all these changes are producing?
Couple of the observation which I had changes. One thing that is always constant, and it is also good. Honestly, I started out in memory. Then I did a lot of microcontrollers, PCI cards, medical chips. Every project I took on, do something new. See the post chip world, then see the firmware world, and then see the system world, and then see the protocol world along with design work, system architect work, software development across the verticals. What I observed was surround ourselves with people who challenge our worldview. That's where the growth comes in. That's one piece. Second piece is pay attention to the people around you. Learn from them. Trade short term for the long term. Relationships are important. People are most important. Build relationship. Figure out what matters to people. How we can add value to them.
Thanks a lot, Sanjay. Each time I talk to you, I learn something new. And it's really amazing to see the complexities the government has to deal with, the complexities you as an individual have to deal with, working with the government to make it possible to continue this evolution in the cell economy. And to everybody listening out there, this is why I do the interviews. I learn a lot, and we all learn together to truly make the world better than what it has been all these years. We have to work with it. We cannot just be passive observers. So please come forward, tell us your stories, tell us how what we do can make a difference to the world around us, and what are the things we have to be careful about? What are the cautions that we have to take care? How do we build the guardrails? So together, let's make a harmonious world. Thanks again, Sanjay. It's a joy to listen to you and to see that things are moving in a very meaningful direction.